I haven't forgotten the massacre, and I will never forget it. Because it is deep in my mind and my heart. I am teaching it to my children, so how can I forget?
Whose bill have we paid? And whose victim are we? Until now, nobody answered me.
I looked at him many times. I looked at him, but I called twice. Dad, Dad. I caught my mother's hand while she was tightening on my own.
I remember at the time I heard the sound of M16 shots, and a person fell in front of my eyes.
In the law of the world, nations and religion, and in the law of everything that existed, you have the right to defend yourself.
This is the story of Tell el-Za'atar camp. Tell el-Za'atar is a very simple camp, and its people are simple and friendly. They had left Palestine in 1948, and then they lived in a camp called Tell el-Za'atar camp. I remember that I was young, like even younger. I was 6 years old in Tell el-Za'atar camp. I had friends and we were spending our time in the quarters. I was visiting my grandfather's house. The camp was very simple to the degree that they were very old and simple houses. The houses were not well built. We were listening to the rain sound. It was like music. It was a very nice, simple, and beautiful life. Suddenly, at that time, there were sounds of shoots and cannons. At that moment, everything became totally different.
What I remember, that the first shell fell on the printing house, containing a lot of papers. This was in the evening. Once I glanced this shell passing, it fell on the printing house, which was burned. As you know, the papers were burned, and it was a terrible scene. The fire ate the papers, cartoons, and ink.
I remember that well. My mother caught us, and we moved to our grandfather's house. When we moved to grandfather's house, we found them escaped because the camp was besieged.
Mom and I were moving from place to place. We were getting the lentils out of the soil, and my mother cooked it with the soil. Even when we were moving from one place to another, we passed over the corpses. We saw the shot people. Sometimes I saw my father while carrying the injured persons. My father had a white shirt which was stained with blood. I asked him, "What was that from?" He answered, "This was a person who was injured due to falling and I carried him." He was lying.
I remember well that we had bird that my father was taking care of. We had a bird that I liked it. So I told my father that I want to go up to bring it. He said, "Don't do that. There is a shieling outside," but I cheated him and went under a shieling and shooting. I was unconscious of myself when I left the house because the two houses were close to one another. There was a smoke ascending from the house. I was afraid that the bird was dead. When I arrived there, I found it alive. I brought the cage down. There were seeds that we were peeling. I returned to my grandfather's house with a sparrow. My parents and relatives angered at me a little, but we overcome it because I saved the bird. As a result of the circumstances through which the campaign went, we reached a stage in which water and food supply were not available anymore. The problem was not only about water, but also we're in August. The weather in June and August is hot, and we needed water. I remember very well that there was a well beside the house. There was a common saying which says that people of Tell el-Za'atar drink water mixed with blood. Indeed, the accident took place before my eyes and I saw it with my own eyes. The people who was hiding with us volunteered to bring us water after we persisted in our request. I sneaked out for a while to see what was going on outside. I had curiosity to know what was happening outside, as we were still unaware of what was going on there. Actually, when he reached the well, he was snapped, so he fell in the well. We didn't know what was there in the water, what fell in it. We didn't care a lot. The important thing was that we wanted to drink water, to the extent that they used to give us water in jerry can cover in order for us not to consume all the water, because they knew that the siege will last longer against the campaign. The siege lasted for 3 months and the camp was blockaded from all the sides and there was no food any longer. We heard from our neighbors, all of us were immigrants and all of us were hiding with each other, that the refrigerator of fruits and vegetables were opened and that people were going to bring their families food to feed them. So we asked our mother to bring us food.
She went the first time and everything was all right. And I remember she went again on the same day. Well, there was fierce fighting in that area.
My mother went to the refrigerators. On her way, she was stabbed in her back, so she died even before reaching the refrigerator. We heard from people that she died.
To the best of our knowledge, she was injured. They had told us she was injured, but in fact, it was fatal.
When the siege got worse against the campaign, and the house where we were became under threat and missile was thrown on it. Leaving the house was inescapable, so we moved to another place. I remember that it was a small room, not a very big one.
We packed our stuff and everything we could collect and went to the other building. And then we said we wish we didn't leave.
In that time, we all slept that night in one row. All of us slept beside each other.
I was attached to my father a lot, naturally. I love him and he loves me, so I used to sleep beside him. I slept beside him because it was me who wanted that, not him. On the contrary, he asked me to sleep inside.
Once he lit his cigarette, its light was seen by those who bombed camp. So a missile fell exactly upon him.
I woke up after hearing a very loud sound. It was a terrible explosion. My father was not moving, and I found myself covered with his blood.
We thought that my brother Haidar, who was sleeping beside him, was injured, but he wasn't hurt badly. In that moment, my father died as a result of that missile that fell on the place where we were.
Of course, I screamed and cursed. And I remember that I had a friend whose name was Ibrahim. I used to go out with that little young man to play together. I woke up late for a reason, so I heard the sound of a missile. We were surprised when we went out to see what was there. We found a mother and her son, my friend Ibrahim, injured and dead. I cried automatically. I lost my friend with whom I used to play. Of course, on Thursday, 16th of September, 1982, 2 days after the Palestinian resistance left Beirut, the Zionist enemy started to invade Beirut from 3 fronts.
اجتاح بيروت من 3 محاور.
The Zionist forces, or the colonial Zionist army, was gathering some militias from the south and eastern Beirut.
من الجنوب من بيروت الشرقية.
They were transporting them by helicopter to Beirut airport to be distributed around the camp. They were transported from the airport to the surrounding of the camp and then moved to Al-Madina Al-Riyadiyya with vans.
بشاحنات. حوالي الساعة 6 إلا
At
ربع.
about 5:45, a group descended from Al-Madina Al-Riyadiyya going towards the camp. They broke into it and fought those who were there.
طبعا بشكل قتالي واقتحام.
On Saturday, the second day of the massacre, we got into the house to see what happened to the house. When I entered the house, I saw my father dead there.
مستشهد هون.
Our neighbor Layla was here sleeping in this direction like this. And above her was my brother Nidal, and my brother Farid here, and then Shadi and Shadia there. She died. She was here in the corner. She used to come to my mother here. My mother was sleeping here while she was injured. My sister Nihad was beside her. My sister Suad was here injured because she was paralyzed immediately when the fire was shot. The massacre took place in our place as the following. They used to make a row near this wall, and my father was inside bringing them money. He gave it to them, so they told him to go near the wall. Once he turned his face, they started shooting. He was shot in his flank and died instantly. There were no moments to pass. He died immediately. They started shooting everybody. My brother Nidal was hiding in this corner where there was a mattress. While he was hiding in this corner, they started shooting him. They saw him moving, so they shot him until they got him and he fell down.
ونزل.
Concerning my brothers Ismail and Maher, Maher was the elder. They were hiding in this corner. During the shooting, Maher held Ismail's hand, and they ran towards the door and entered the kitchen. They went to hide in the bathroom through the kitchen. They were watching what was going on in the room from the bathroom.
بصير
In that time, I was 20 years old. My brothers who died were 4. There were 5 if we count my father, and 6 if we count our neighbor. My sister Suad, who is still paralyzed, was injured. My mother and sister Nihad were injured. You know, when one enters the house and sees his father and brothers on the ground immovable, while he left them only for 1 day and used to talk to them, you know his feelings and emotions. Of course, I cried and felt frustrated and desperate, and for a while had a stronger feeling to take revenge.
I have the Lebanese nationality. My father has lived in Shatila camp for a long time, since 1948, even before coming from Palestine. When the Palestinians came, he married my mother in the camp, and we are still living in the camp. We grew up and lived here in the middle of the camp. In the massacre of Sabra and Shatila, I and my father had a shop located in the lower street, the camp main street. I was 12 years old. My father sent me to wash dishes. There was a reservoir outside in the street with a faucet by which we washed dishes and cups. I went out to wash the dishes and cups, so they shot at us and hit the reservoir, so we left the camp. We entered the camp's alleys and got ourselves out of it. We stayed in Beirut for about 3 days, in the middle of Beirut. When the massacre was over, we went back. So they destroyed my father's shop. The shop was a restaurant for grilled meat. They corrupted the shop and threw out its contents. I left him preparing the shop while I walked a little forward, not more than 10-15 meters, to find the first body that's been blown up. Right in front of us was the supermarket of Abu Qaid. Qaid's sister, who was the owner of the supermarket, had been hanged by a rope in the ceiling while she was pregnant. And they cut her from the middle, and the baby was dangling from her abdomen. All the sights that I have seen are not equal to the sight of Qaid's sister, who was cut in 2 pieces from the middle. It was a very difficult picture, that view which I saw. I was almost, for 3 months, waking in the middle of the night, screaming out of horror because of that horrible sight. I was in that condition for about 3 months, in which I couldn't sleep every night as a result of that sight. The massacre of Tel Zatar took place 50 days after the siege of the camp. It took place while leaving the camp after 50 days of blockade and shelling. My father came. We decided to leave the camp as an order to vacate the camp was issued. My father carried my little sister, who was 4 months old, caught his hand and walked while my mother carried my middle sister. My elder sister held her gown because she was carrying a clothes sack with her second hand. While we were walking in the alleys of the camp, we were seeing bodies here and there. We were surprised by a strange view. We saw them catching a Palestinian young man, tying his hands and legs to a jeep and the other hand and leg to a column, and they were removing his legs. We walked to leave the camp, so they stopped us and asked my father to leave the child and give him to his mother. So my father felt that his end was close and that he was going to die. They shouted at him, "Give the child to his mother or we will kill you with bullets along with him." The baby was my little sister and they didn't know that as the boy was covered, so they didn't know whether the baby was a male or a female. While my father was giving the baby to my mother, they shot him in his head. My father didn't die immediately. Tears filled our eyes, so I was afraid, and thus hid holding my mother's gown. My elder sister hid too, holding my mother from behind. They took him and dragged him from his hair, put him on one side of the sidewalk, and slaughtered him. What will happen to a child who sees these sights? Or a mother? How is she to endure this sight? And the children were all watching. Of course, I looked at him more than once. I called him twice, "Father, Father," while I was holding my mother, and she dragged me from behind with hands like this. They stopped us in this place. Here I stood with my father. Here is where they asked me to let the baby go.
Most of who came out of the Dakuni area were women, children, and elderly people. And I remember at that time they gathered us in a very large yard. And we waited before putting people in pickups, trucks, and take them to the sports city. While I was sitting, I remember someone who has thick hair holds a Kalashnikov, and his appearance looks scary. Up to now, I recall his appearance and don't forget never. He hit me on the head with the buttstock of his weapon, and I suffered a lot at that time because I didn't do anything. I asked him, "Why you hit me on the head with your weapon? I didn't do anything to you." Therefore, I will never forget how he looks, even if I saw him now.
And we were seeing the trucks in front of us. Red Cross puts The problem is that the Red Cross was seeing killing and only puts people in trucks. He says to them, "Come on, leave," instead to contribute to stop the killing.
When they left, all they cared about was to escape to avoid further killing. I remember well a little baby wrapped in. When the pickup hastened to leave, the child fell down from his mother's hands. His age was no more than a few months. The mother shouted from the back of the pickup, but the pickup had been already dashed off. As soon as the baby fell, he had died because it was a strong fall. The scene is still firmly established in my memory, and I can't forget.
When we left Tel Zatar, we had been populated in a house in Damour. Due to the effect of the shock after my father's death, my mother stopped taking care of us. The age of my sister was only 4 months, and she didn't care to breastfeed or to feed her at all. She remained depressed, as if she was not in this life. Her family came and took her. There was at the time internal institutions dealing with the Palestinian issue. They had chosen us to join the institution, and it was called Children's Villages, Hanan. It's located in the mountain in the West Market. That was in 78.
When we arrived to Damour, a young lady came and talked with my grandmother and told her that it is necessary to take the children to the institution of Beit Atfal al-Sumud. It is an institution for the children of martyrs. Indeed, we went to Beit Atfal al-Sumud. It was like a dream, like a fantasy. When I entered the institution, I found trees, roses, swings, and views have not been long time ago. The odor, at that time they had pine trees in the area of Bir Hassan. The smell of the trees gives you the feeling like you have entered into the house of dreams.
زي اللي فايتة على بيت الأحلام.
In school, there were many children, so we forgot. We were gathering in a boarding school, and we used to go out on periodical trips, especially traveling to European countries and entertaining trips. That reflected positively on me. Even in the school attention was given, I'm a shy person and I feel sensitive about anything. When anyone was talking to me, I used to cry immediately. So they cared about me and treated me kindly, to the point that the woman who raised me used to sometimes come to the classroom to help me feel that I am reassured. I also call her mother.
When we were in the institution, it did every effort to entertain children. Correct. And they succeeded in that. I do not say that we have forgotten, but we busy ourselves in that sense. Every month we received a gift, or went out to trips, or scouts, or theater, or art, and drawing by the best teachers.
They were as well paying attention to our psychological status. If someone noticed that you are dissatisfied, he would come to you immediately. They were always willing to follow up your psychological status and worked a lot on this matter. For example, I have often had nightmares without end. They worked a lot to help me get rid of those nightmares that I was suffering from. Some kids were walking at night, others were suffering from bedwetting. Thus, they worked to solve these problems.
While volunteering in the institution, even before that, I loved music. And I learned it without a teacher. And by accident, I saw a small woodwind instrument in the trash. I took it, cleaned it, and tried to blow. It was a small saxophone machine. I continued work on this subject, and certainly throughout the institution as well. There were teachers of art, that's why I liked music. They have supervised and certainly taught me. They have educated me completely in all music subjects. At the same time, I worked with Beit Atfal al-Sumud. I was a volunteer in painting and music.
فطبعا
Of course, we educated many generations. And up to now, I am teaching in Rashidiyya camp as a volunteer, also to complete the process of educating those children who do not have a homeland, or rather do not have the potential to go to study abroad. Through my work in music, Tell al-Za'atar massacre has left its marks on my imagination. Something from the massacre always enters in all my musical works. Consequently, it certainly affects both the massacre incident itself or the environment in which I live, or in case I wanted to remember the area. Certainly my selection of music and my intensive care about it helped me forget sometimes some of the things that happened to me in my life. I used to devote enough time for it.
On August 12, I'm bringing children to the institution, explaining to them and telling them my story and the story of the people of Tell al-Za'atar, in commemoration of Tell al-Za'atar, in order that they understand the suffering experienced by the people of this camp. Of course, after this activity, some kids were expressing what they heard through drawings or writing songs, and through sketch, they become expressing what they knew about the incident.
بيصيروا يعبروا عن اللي بعرفوه عن هاي المناسبة.
هلا طبعا
Of course, it is true. Some people held weapons and went to fight. Some of them continued, and some of them martyred. Some of them wounded. But I myself found that my place is in this field, in music, which means giving and advocating a specific situation that I have lived. And I actually found this method very successful.
I fought with weapons because of what happened in the camps of Sabra and Shatila. I hold it in the war of the camps.
حملناه بحرب المخيمات.
The small child who died in the massacre of Sabra and Shatila was just a little kid. Does not distinguish anything. Children aged a month or 2 months and children aged 6 months, they've all been killed. Did they distinguish that they were children? They did not. We also did not distinguish. Took up arms to defend the camp, which we have seen. We don't want this tragedy to be repeated again, which took place in the camps of Sabra and Shatila.
After the massacre, I enrolled into an institute. 3 years later, we were surprised by the outbreak of fighting between camps, which means that our lives have changed. I took up arms and defended the camp, the people of the camp, and basically defended myself, because I don't want the massacre that happened to us to be repeated again. My father and brothers were killed when they were without a weapon, so I decided to die while I am carrying a weapon, while I am defending myself. That's better.
مدافع عن نفسي أفضل.
We continued to participate in that war until the first battle ended. After the first battle ended, a second one broke out again. for 40 days, called the Battle of 40 Days, where my brother martyred there, yes. After that, a battle of 6 months broke out, where another brother martyred too, in the Battle of 6 months, my brother Muhammad.
محمد. الله. هون.
Here exactly, I went outside for a few minutes. I was injured in my heel.
طلعت لبرا هيك نتفة صغيرة لهون.
When I injured it, I hid it beneath my heel, and my shoes were burned. And I ran at that time. My foot wasn't cut off.
البوت ولع. ركضت نطيت على اجري هي كانت مش مقطوعة. ركضت هون.
I ran till here and sat on the floor and began to put out the fire in my shoes.
فتت لهون. هون قعدت.
Another friend of mine came. He was also injured, and he stumbled at the doorstep.
هاد صاحبي كمان متصاب.
And he had a grenade in his hand. And the grenade went off. And I turned on my side like this. It went off on my leg, and the other leg was cut off. And my friend's name, his name was Abu Farid, died. Then they got me out of that window. In that light over there, they got me out to another house. From one block till the next. I reached Al Hilal, and there I got treated.
لحكموني.
The Israeli invasion of Lebanon took place, so we went to Syria. And there we had to study in schools of the martyrs' children. And at that time we used to go to our families in some of the days of summer, but I didn't have a family, so I stayed most of the summer days at the school. In 1997, I went to visit Lebanon again, and I went to my uncle's house, where I knew that his daughter is married in a camp in Hama. And this girl knows my mom and where my mom is. Unfortunately, my mother was in Syria, and I'm living in Syria and I do not even know where she is. So I went to Hama and I arrived to my cousin.
دلت على بنت خالي.
When I walked with my cousin, we arrived at a crossroads where my mother was sitting on the top of a hill overlooking the street. So we went. My cousin told me not to run towards her. She wants to see and ask her, don't greet her. I told her I cannot, but she told me to be patient. She asked her, why are you standing here? She said, there's someone very important coming. She said to her, this is Hassan. I couldn't wait. I kissed her hands, hugged and touched her, and she did the same. She said, from today onwards, do not call me Muhaddin. Hassan returned to me. Call me from today, Hassan. The feelings inside me changed, and I started to feel like I found the home that I had lost for 20, 30, or 40 years. I felt that I finally started to get my people back. I found my parents. I was a lonely child. I didn't have any brothers or sisters. and I was lonely without my parents.
ووحيد من غير أهل.
Most situations that were annoying to us, when we weren't on Eid, for example, when our kin used to come, as we have stayed in touch with our relatives. It is true that our parents had died, but there was a grandfather, grandmother, uncle, and brother, and always there was contact between us and them. Those moments were too severe to us, between our desire to rely on ourselves and our desire at the same time to integrate with them. When they used to visit us, we were extremely happy. At the end of the day, when they were about to leave, we were really feel a great sadness because we were linked to them. They were all our past.
يعني الواحد أثناء المجزرة أو
During the massacre, or at the time of the massacre, I used to sleep but not feel comfortable. If I heard the sound of the air, I would have thought that someone is coming to kill me, or someone coming to arrest me, or do something to me. I did not feel completely safe. Dreaming unpleasant dreams, you wake up while seeing ghosts, or you live in a ghost town, as though you did not live in this world, but you live in between graves.
There was a nightmare that never leaves me, and it stayed for a long time. I was always dreaming of it. About a person enters from the window, holding a knife, and wants to kill me. I was waking up screaming at the night. I managed to get rid of this nightmare by help from specialists who were in Beit Atfal al-Sumud. They helped me to overcome this nightmare phase. But this dream remained annoys me until I became 11 years old.
11 سنة.
Among the influences, for example, I stayed almost a year unable to sleep. I wake up in the night screaming, cannot concentrate on things. Similar to a 2-year-old child, to be asleep and wake up to find himself wet. This happened to me for a year, and I remember it well, although I was at an age that such a thing should not happen to me.
After the massacre, exactly when I was moved to internal schools, I felt that everybody hated me. Maybe because I kept this, I had a feeling that everybody hated me. As they were talking to me, I started to cry. I felt that they are talking to me for their benefit, not for me. Among the scenes that we've seen, these things that are unimaginable. Look at these scenes that are displayed about Sabra and Shatila massacre. If anyone has any just sense of humanity would be affected by this scene that he sees on TV, how would he feel if he saw it alive?
When I got married, of course I have changed. I have a family now, and I want them to live better than what I had experienced. I got married, and I got children, and a house, thank God. I worked, and I started thinking about how to raise my children. The relationship that I could not live, my relationship with my brothers, made me feel that my relationship with my children should be as if they are my brothers. I deal with them not as a father, but rather as a brother, friend, lover, and I am the mother and the sister. Thus I taught them to tell me everything that they see and everything that happens to them. Certainly, as I felt towards my father and mother, they also feel the same towards me now. But at the same time, one can think slightly that things which happened to me could happen to my family too. This matter creates a personal dilemma. Maybe from the hard circumstances that I saw, I traveled many times. And sometimes I travel deliberately. I try between me and myself to stretch the period, because I didn't want to mix with my kids, because it was a hard thing. I mean, I was very attached to my father, and I suffered from that, and inside me, I didn't want my kids to go through that experience.
يمروا بنفس التجربة.
أنا عائلة تعني لي كتير
My
شغلات.
family means a lot to me. I'm a person who lost his family, and I was lonely. I lost my father, who was killed in front of me. So I tried not to carry weapons, and did anything to stay near my children. I lost my mother for a time, and I sought a good relationship with my wife in order to establish my children, and my children remain within this family. My missing home and absence of parents, I tried to make it up to my children. I was trying to bear my own wounds in myself in order to provide for what children want and what I had been deprived of.
لا حرمت منهم.
Every year, on August 12, is the most day of sorrow and depression. To this day, it looks like a movie that I recall completely. I don't forget any minor detail that had happened to me that date.
التاريخ.
طبعا بعد الميزة
Of course, after the massacre, a lot of time has been lost. Even the life has been lost.
حتى يمكن عمر ضاع.
If the Sabra and Shatila massacre did not happen, I may never have carried a weapon or fought or anything, because basically nothing was going to happen and the war of camps were not to break out.